KIGA, it's abbreviation of the full name, which is Polish Chamber of Commerce on Electronics and Telecommunications. It's National Trade Association of Digital Industry in Poland. And in the beginning, I would like to thank the organizers for the invitation. Dear organizers, I'd like to thank all of you for opening such an important channel of communication between entrepreneurs and the standardization community. We really need it, and we need to improve this communication. And honestly, it's not easy. I believe that these kinds of meetings are the best way to make cooperation between interested parties more effective. And how important it is, Dr. Canfrey explains perfectly. The first slide, title slide, contains two messages. First is that the industry needs a new set of standards, and it should be prepared taking into account excuse me for interruption. I will start once more. Industry needs a new set of standards, and the standards should be prepared taking into account all complexity of new business models we are dealing with. It means that we expect new approach. To explain what does it mean, we need to show mentioned complexity. Digitization in industrial plants is particularly difficult to describe systematically due to the complexity of operations carrying out. The challenge is to structure and streamline the transformation process which companies have to deal with. Therefore, entrepreneurs are looking for standards that can be helpful in this. The title of this presentation is Standards of our Industry is intentionally without any additional descriptor, because it is not only about Industry 4.0. This presentation covers only a small part of this topic, of course, but I will try to show which aspects, I mean global, very general by nature, are the most important from business point of view. I'd like to focus on the integrative role of standards, which should play a role in manufacturing and industry in the creation of ICT standards and technical specifications. And there are results of consultation with digital companies. I will focus only on those crucial important topics for the pace of development of the industry of the future. This is a vision of the future industry, which I'll try to describe, and we named the European Union as Industry 4.0. So let's move to the agenda. And I divided my presentation into 4 parts. The first thing is mainly about Industry 4.0. I'd like to show you how it looks and perceived today, and I'll try to tell a few words about current companies' management perception of it. In the second part, it will be about development, drivers, and enablers. I'd like to start by pointing to some technical, legal, ecological, and business aspects of modern industry development to draw attention of members of standardization committee to it. It will be about the drivers and enablers of current transformation. Why I'm saying it? Because this is a very dynamic situation. I am pretty sure that within 2-3 years, our set of drivers and enablers could change dramatically. The third part will be about new legal framework. It is partly the result of the belief that expectations formulated by businesses towards standardization organizations and communities should be focused primarily on issues related to process of intensive modernization of legal framework relevant for companies in all this transformation. And the last part will be about the reference architecture. I'd like to indicate some standards and particular importance for the pace of economic development and limiting the harmful impact of the industry on the natural environment and climate. And for this purpose, I'd like to use reference model defining the layered architecture of data transmission network in relation to Industry 4.0. So let's move to the first promise topic. I hope it's on the screen. So the first and trivial statement is that Industry 4.0 is a reality. We observe the creation of dynamic digital ecosystems and the use of new technologies. It is not only about mobilizing the potential of the new production methods and processes and technologies. These are projects that pave the way to the future. I think that's more important. Observing what is going on in factories, it seems that the most important process in integration of pure IT systems with cyber-physical systems is creating new generation of CPSs. Initially, main efforts were focused, I mean historically, because this process began in the beginning of the century. And these efforts were focused on connections which were based on the pure procedural algorithms. And because of it was much easier. Now we observe a lot of projects aimed on connections which are focused on implementing artificial intelligence modules, so-called thinking technologies. This is how so-called vertical integration takes place. From this perspective, standards play facilitator role. All standards, I mean. Helping companies to achieve appropriate level of internal interoperability inside the company and data safety of current and future software, hardware, machinery, devices, people, and so on. Speaking about middle and long-term evolution, the same philosophy should be helpful to manage horizontal integration. A lot of opportunities will open for the design and implementation of innovative, data-driven, platform-based business models, which are characterized by the new forms of value proposition, revenue, or turnover generation and value creation architecture. I tried to depict it in a form of circular, let's say, circularly shaped picture with the industry inside, showing a lot of topics which are very difficult to structure. And bearing in mind that everything should be defined and driven by standardized industrial Internet of Things, we should focus on certain topics. And these topics you can see on the slide. And in this context, and on the basis of evaluation of the current situation, And in the identification of existing opportunities and shortfalls, of course, we should focus on 5 topics, on 5 domains. The first is the sustainable value proposition by virtualization of products and services. The second is data-driven business models and modification of revenue generation. The third, the further development of value creation architectures. The fourth, development and implementation of sustainable business management strategies and digital value network and sustainability of smart contracts. And last but not least is distributed ledger technologies, usually named by a 3-letter abbreviation, DLT. I hope that you see the link between this well-known wording you hear around about Industry 4.0 and some additional information I tried to provide you here. So, as I mentioned, Industry 4.0 is reality. But the perception of this reality is very difficult from different point of views. So what is the Industry 4.0 today in companies which are in it? So it is environment mainly of multi-plant manufacturers, horizontally integrated, let's say network, perform production and services in global scale. Moreover, we can also look from the different perspective, that this is the trend observed in mass production, mainly in multi-plant enterprises. And from this perspective, valuable is the chart, the scheme depicted on the slide, showing that people more are focused on cooperation with external world than internally in factory. But we have to take care of both parts of the story. So let's have a look how it looks like from different perspectives. On the left side, you can see the mass, let's say, of connections between machines. So this is the example of picture presenting us the machine networking. This is what is going now and what is the heart of Industry 4.0 concept. Today's Industry 4.0 is really in the corporate environment. And in case of large, but local companies, we can see only some trials and experiments with the new business models. But we can't say it's reality. But what is the most important message is that the bulk of economy, I mean the SME sectors, and for SME sectors, it's a terra incognita. So what we can say about SMEs today? So from my point of view, and for many dealing with this issue, is that it's absolutely unavoidable that SMEs will move to industrial networks too, because it is the way to increase total productivity, and in case of SMEs, frankly, even double the current productivity is possible. It is about quality of products and services, coverage of niches, what is the main target of activities in case of SMEs, and to improve overall economic efficiency of this sector. But sector needs something more than to make things happen. Let's say like that. They need new legal framework a new approach to standardization community. And this section asks to adapt this section, I mean this sector of companies, law and standards to their specificity and scale, excuse me. On the right side of the slide, you see the same picture, but from a more organized point of view, but still not telling a lot about how to do it. So let's try to think how we can doing better and what other limitations we have to take into account. So industry development should more than ever take into account what's going on externally. I know that this statement is trivial, but we also know that not accepted sufficiently in practice. And to change the situation, we should understand why. And only after that, standard will have chance to facilitate sustainable development. And this is what I would like to say in the beginning. On the first chart, you have the information how consumption of energy looked like last 100 years. And we can have such a very important impression that during last 70 years, we powered our activities using fossil fuels practically only. And 90% of all emissions took place during this time. Also, mining, poisoning the environment with plant protection, chemicals, I don't know even how much of them were deposed in the environment, waste production and others, followed the same pattern because it was strictly linked the consumption with consumption of energy. Let's look on the second chart. It's about world population. We see that it is also similar shape of curve, and it's a result, of course, of industry development, which enabled agricultural revolution. Comparing these two curves, we see that average consumption has grown even faster than population. And more importantly, the scale of this type of consumption have reached levels that exceed our planet's capability. And this is relevant for the framework and standards we have to establish to take care of this problem. It is obvious that we need to change way of manufacturing and consumption style just to survive as a species. We need set a new set of rules for industry. So it is very much about data and information collection, because to make good decisions, we have to have information. To make it in a reasonable way, we have quickly collect huge amount of data about the industry, consumption, environment, etc., to make the system suitable and sustainable. Suitable to the situation and sustainable, that's what I meant. So it is very much about cybersecurity too. Let's look what are consequences of, because this slide is about consequences of sustainable industrial development happened in 20th century. So the first chart is about Earth as a main recycler working for the whole global industry. And perhaps most of you, or majority of you, excuse me, perfectly know that Earth achieved limits of its capacity as a recycler something like 50 years ago, in year 1970. Till that point in time, situation has become worse. And the only viable solution is to switch to circular economy. And that is the way, why we need to develop data-driven industry model and invent an appropriate legal framework. I link these two things, standards and legal framework, enabling companies to make businesses in this legal environment. The second chart, you see an example of such a consequence, but it's about global warming. But believe me, there are a lot of other even more dangerous indicators, which we collected from research the last 20 years. So now it's a time to come back to have a look on what's going on in business, because industry industry is exposed to the global digital manufacturing system transformation, and to establish new legal framework which will be anchored in reality, we have to learn much more how economy works today, and to gain knowledge to swap to sustainable economy presented in European Union Green Deal. Improvement in standardization processes should be derived from the analysis of list of drivers and enablers. And I don't want to read about all of them. I'd like only to show you to understanding the drivers and enablers will help us to establish legal framework, and these two last points on the right side in italics is about it. Now let's have a look on digitalization process and such, and it's how we can link it with what's going on in the environment, what's going on in external environment to the industry 4.0. So digitalization of industry is a very good time to shape it in such a way that the collected data valuable for optimizing health, resources management, and control a level of pressure imposed by industry on ecosystems. I believe standards community has a lot to do about it. As you see on the slide, drivers and enablers are strictly on the slide focused on environmental and climate issues. All the time I need a minute to switch to the next slide. Excuse me for a small interruption. Now I'd like to say a few words about social aspects and technological aspects of the process. Because all this transformation we speak about will change social relations. And without massive support from the society, will not happen in due time. It will not happen in due time, in the time we need to do it. The topic in italics are those aspects that require much more support, especially from the standardization community. On the next slide, I'm coming back to Industry 4.0 issues. and to the aspect well known as vertical integration. When it comes to discuss about it, there is no interest how to define it. Companies are focused mainly on how to lower cost of integration of IT and cybersecurity systems. They know what they are doing, and they understand, I mean, management of companies. They need help from standards. So let's look for a while on the role of standards in this process of vertical integration of companies. First of all, the standards should help to configure network manufacturing systems that approach different case scenarios with alternative strategies. As you see, companies in their risk management understand that future could be very different from their expectations they have today. Standards also should support the regulatory framework of vertical integration in the factory, but it is not about the internal issues in the factory. It is how factory should be organized internally to be prepared to work in the fast-changing external environment. The third important topic from my point of view is about forming the future smart factory. Bearing, of course, in mind that manufacturing structures will no longer be concrete or predetermined. So once again, here the dynamics, the growing dynamics of the business should be taken into account. And last, standards should help to define configuration rules, which will be an automated case-specific structure which will be created and adopted to the high level of resilience of the company. That's what we know, and we can tell about the, let's say, vertical integration. So now we have to say a few words about horizontal integration. Unfortunately, horizontal and vertical processes are used to be treated as treated separately, and mainly because vertical integration is of a major for majority of the companies means that a lot of difficult tasks they have to do today, and horizontal integration is more about future. That's why they separate these two topics. And on this slide, we can see only the definition important for companies today. The definition says, the term horizontal integration is commonly understood as optimized material and information flow. But frankly, horizontal integration in the future definition will be about linking cybersecurity systems between companies. So that's the reason why it will be a growing demand for standards for cybersecurity, for semantics and markup languages, and for standardized Internet of Things, industrial Internet of Things, network protocols may be improved comparing to what we have today. Once again, I'd like to be sure that you have the same screen as I have. I hope it is. So, taking into account these two processes, vertical and horizontal integration. Vertical is just happening now, and horizontal is on the beginning stage and mainly happens in corporate environment. But observing these two processes, we are sure that we should improve the bidirectional communication from business to standardization community and from standardization community to businesses. And it should be about technology, about legal framework, about work design, and of course, most of all, about cybersecurity. And I'm pretty sure that Mr. Dr. Humphreys explained why very, very precisely. But now I'd like to strengthen even his statements. We should understand that standardization community formed in 20th century is the community being a main brick, a foundation of whole innovation and technology transfer system we established globally. Because standards are a piece of knowledge, well defined, prepared in very compressed form, informing industry what is the state of art in technology, and it is very much of technologies, and that's why I think it's very much about technology transfer. But it is also visible, looking on both sides, that because companies are more and more innovative, it is necessary to strengthen the opposite direction stream from the standardization from businesses to standardization community, to support them with the additional stream of knowledge. Now I would like to, I think that once again I proved to some extent why this communication is important. I have started my presentation from this statement. Now I'd like to speak about quality of presenting all the topic of standardization and transformation of industry. For approximately, let's say, 7 years, this scheme was the most popular one, and majority of speakers dealing with Industry 4.0 used it in their presentation, so I repeated it. Mainly because it's hierarchical. It makes explanatory process easier, but unfortunately, it masks physical implementation too. Digital integration makes boundaries between the layers you see picture blurred. These boundaries in practice are almost invisible. And to improve the understanding and to improve the way of speaking about it, we need to prepare not such a physical model, because in my opinion, it's an old-fashioned model, but we have to prepare a new logical model. So to do something what happened in telecom industry. I'll follow this topic next. And that was the task for standardization community. I'm sure that majority of you know open systems interconnection reference model. Bearing in mind that plans are transformed into industrial Internet of Things lands, it is natural that logical reference model I mentioned, which facilitated Internet communication development, will be very useful to explain nature of digital integration factors. Now I'd like to show you this model I spoke a minute ago about. And I'd like to say that this is the starting point for understanding so-called RAMI 4.0. This is Reference Architecture Model of Industry 4.0. And it is absolutely basic to understand the modeling methodology in reference model of data transmission network structures built as open systems. Why I'd like to underline it? Because I remember that in the past, corporate systems were built as cloud systems. And those times, this philosophy was very different. We should, from the very beginning, construct inside the company industrial Internet of Things, bearing in mind that in the near future, we have to connect these LANs to one industrial global Internet of Things. For telecommunication community, this RAMI 4.0 scheme is obvious, natural, logical, because we have more than 25 years of life with OSI model. So for us, it's not an issue, but it is not about the rest of industry. So we should do much more to explain the rest of industry, this logical philosophy, which was used in this famous brand, because I'd like to say, to name the same word, using the same wording as Dr. Humphreys used in his presentation, that I believe that this OSI reference model was a milestone for understanding how to link the logical world with physical world. And why it is important, I will give you one remark only. When engineers from the physical world works on this model, they think that this first layer, physical, is really physical. They don't understand this is also logical level, but dealing with the physical world, which is under this physical logical layer. And I'll annotate it. So now it's time to show you RAMI model. It was prepared by the sister organization of Kigate, ZWI, in Germany, and they transform it to the DIN specification, but they're in the middle of the process for me. And I'll explain later why. But as this DIN specification was prepared in year 2016, yes, 2016. So we had some time to check how what does it mean, and many European Industry 4.0 platforms agreed that the RAMI 4.0 is well prepared standard or ideal standard which should be implemented internationally. Why? For me, because it is anchored in the past. So it is innovative usage of ISO interconnection reference model. This is strong side of it, extension of the previous thought. And it will be very helpful to organize communication model in manufacturing companies. It integrates physical, logical, digital, organizational way of thinking about networking and about network economy as a whole. Looking on the model, we see that it is multiplication of the same idea of OSI model on different levels. This is what 3D, three-dimensional aspect of this model is about. But of course, there are a lot of interlayers between these vertical layers, but I do not have time to dig it deeper. So let's stop on this level. But what I'd like to say that the main block of this concept is so-called administration shell, digital administration, let's say digital twin. It is of asset. Excuse me, in the title I made a mistake. It should be AAS, not ASS, because it is asset administration shell. That's the official name we used to use for the time being. So this model established the beginning and the idea how to move from the physical world to the twinning world, to construct the twins of current factories just to improve management, resilience, and productivity. Now it's time because I'm coming to the end of the presentation, to make some summaries. So let's ask very general question. Why industrial networks makes difference? So answer is obvious, but not well absorbed by the community. The statement is that it is better construct value chains, gives products more added value. But what I'd like to add is that it's also the way how to transform chains to networks. And this rule works on all levels. So it is not easy to make such a remark that current legal framework, very much focused on protecting competition, is not well prepared for such a deep cooperation between companies. And in my personal opinion, to establish new environment very much oriented on some kind of mixture of cooperation and competition, so-called competition, will be a real challenge for decision makers, policymakers, and companies. And I decided to name it as a holy grail of network economy. And only if this legal framework will be really good, we can have all profits and we'll see all advantages of Industry 4.0. And I'm pretty sure that in case of poor legal environment, we can even slow down innovations and development. But I assume that will not happen. And I'm pretty sure that standardized networks ensures level playing field and help companies to go to this better legal environment. And this optimism is anchored on the fact that we have a general view on futures for implementation. I presented in let's say 5 main parts, and my perception is that standards support actions for businesses just structured in such a way. But what I'd like to underline is the role of this support in growing proportionally to how the cooperation, global horizontal cooperation, I mean, gain global productivity. Because it will be very innovative process and we have to take it into account. So general futures for implementation, you have on the slide. Oh, excuse me, I missed to switch to the next slide. Excuse me a lot. This is the slide which illustrates the topic I'm trying to touch now. So you have, I have to repeat that you have these general features I mentioned for implementation you have on the slide. And what is even more important, standards should establish synergy between 2 parallel processes, making Industry 4.0 accessible for companies and speeding up, improving pace of transformation towards circular economy. So, and it's time for almost last slide. I'd like to show you today, it's about circular economy. It is very much about future, but we should remember that 30 years is not really a long time for the industry, because the average investment cycle is between 20 and 25 years. So within 30 years, we should expect growing social pressure on governments and industry to pay really more attention to climate and ecology. And because of it, the evolutionary ripeness of circular economy is rather clear. So new types of business activities should be established, adapted to the concept of circular economy. New competitions and new competitors, an increase of the importance of cooperation should be taken into account. I expect switching from quantitative to high quality consumption. I believe in investments in technologies components for suitable economy, what we allow to achieve the targets of electricity, for example. And I can speak about it for 1 hour. It's not the point. The point is that we have clear view what is the goal, but what is really very blurred is the way how to reach this state, the stable state we name circular economy. And we have both to solve a lot of digital aspects, just to transform securely data to information to product. We have to take care of whole value chain and hold the physical picture of what's going on Earth. This is what administration shell of assets is about. We have to link it with the product passport. So it is very advanced expectations of how deep the digital twinning will be. And only having this in hands, well standardized, we can start to think about the circulation mapping to avoid mistakes we made in the past. And after that, when all standards will be prepared, or almost prepared, we can only start to invent new legal regulations. And these legal challenges, we have even more than the standard challenges. And this is everything what I have prepared for today. Thanks a lot for your attention.